Hello and welcome to yet another power-packed edition of Brand Equity with me, Sonali Krishna. This week, Brand Equity travels at lightning speed from a candid chat with the WPP CEO, Martin Sorrell, on the global crisis and its impact, to Anand Mahindra talking about M&M's latest movement marketing initiative, Sparks the Rise. And last but not the least, find out who's the winner of Brand Equity's special initiative, which agency's campaign was tagged as the most effective with our expert panel. And of course, more importantly, which agency bagged the Viewer's Choice Award. Now, as the global crisis tightens its grip, will we have a repeat of 2009-2010, or will the scenario pan out a little differently this time? I caught up with Martin Sorrell, Chief Executive Officer of WPP, who is currently visiting India, to talk about Standard & Poor's decision to cut US's long-term debt rating and the implications for the advertising industry, and how this will impact consumer and business confidence. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Sorrell. Truly a pleasure to have you.
Good to be here.
How different do you think 2011 is from 2008? I'm talking about the global
From
crisis.
2008, well actually interestingly, 2011 we've surpassed what we did in 2008. So there's been a lot of change between 2008 and 2011. 2010 was a very good year for us. We saw expansion of about 5.3% on our top line worldwide, whereas in 2009 we saw a contraction of 8%. This year so far we've seen growth of around 6%. So we're beyond where we were now in 2008, and profitability has recovered. We've seen margin expansion, quite significant margin expansion. It's slightly different to 2010 in that what we've seen is the emphasis switch a bit. 2010 was about America and traditional media biting back. 2011 we've seen a switch a little bit. Growth in America has continued to be quite good, not as fast as 2010 when America behaved almost like an emerging market, but still okay. But the slowing of the American growth rate has been compensated by a rise in the UK, surprisingly, and in Western continental Europe from very low levels, and of course from Asia, Asia-Pacific, Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, and Central and Eastern Europe. So all in all, no complaints, at least until the last couple of weeks when the stock markets have lurched downwards. We've seen about a 10-15% correction in the stock markets.
I really want to talk about India here and even possibly China.
Yeah.
Do you really think it's advantaged India and China because of this global crisis? Because a lot of funds will possibly be diverted to these two countries.
I think this is an inexorable historical long-term cycle. This is a 200-year swing. You go back 200 years, India and China were 40% of worldwide GNP, as they will shortly be again. And I think this is sort of inevitable in its way. But what this crisis will do will place more focus. I mean, running or trying to run a worldwide company, I'm interested in the delta, in the incremental growth. I'm not interested so much in absolute sizes. Now, whilst it's true that America has still got a 3-to-1 advantage over China, it's $15 trillion in GNP and China is 5. Despite that increase in size, China is growing at 7. The 12 5-year plan is 7% compound. They usually outperform that. So if China grows at 7 or 8% and India grows at 7 or 8%, that's a massive advantage in relation to what's going on in Western Europe and the United States. And if we're right about the L shape and it being a slog, that's going to be more so. So you will see more focus on India, more focus on China. So rather than have just 30% of our business in the BRICS and Next 11, I'd like to have 50%, but we set ourselves a target now of 35 to 40 as we've got up to the 33% target that we had before.
Right. When you talk about investing more in brands than actually, capital costs, would you then say that it's actually advantageous for the global advertising outlet? Because let's look at 2011.
Well, it's not. You can't make that judgment because I think after the last couple of weeks, when stock markets have fallen by 10 or 15% in very short order, what's the net result of that? If I'm a consumer and I read all the stuff and I listen to what you're saying and what others are saying, am I going to buy that extra car or that new car? Probably the answer is I'm much more cautious. and much more uncertain. So it probably makes me a bit nervous. As to when we'll see the impact of it, we've seen no impact of that in our business at all up until the end of July. But it's still very early days because we're talking about events that took place in the last couple of weeks. Our clients, by and large, are on a calendar year budget. Most of them are calendar year budget. It's usual their budgets are set on an annual basis. So I doubt, even if there was an impact, I'm not saying there is, but if there was, I doubt whether we'd see much for the fourth quarter of this year. I mean, after Lehman, our revenues were flat in the fourth quarter of 2008. They didn't fall. They only fell in the first two quarters of 2009. So I think any impact from what we've seen in the last few weeks, I doubt whether we'll see any impact, if there is any, until next year, 2012. And then it's going to be quite confusing because you have the Olympics in London, you have the European Football Championships, and then you have probably the biggest factor on media spending, impact on media spending, which is the US presidential campaign. We estimate that about at least $4 billion will be spent in one way or another on a media campaign.
Time for a short breather, but up ahead, brand equity chat with Anand Mahindra on taking Mahindra Rise to the next level and why you believe it will work. Stay tuned.